Kirmington to Milton Ross on the A18. Roadworks there causing those delays. Usual queues around Mightingate roundabout on the approach, especially for Garrison Road, still very slow now. And it's still very heavy coming out of Driffield on the A614 through Eastbourne, Kirkburn down to the Bainton turn-off. If you see a problem, give me a call if it's safe. 0330 123 0182. There's more online at bbc.co.uk/Humberside.
I don't trust this driver.
It is quite wet at the moment. These heavy showers will slowly move out into the North Sea, and then all parts will become have been banned from attending football matches for up to 5 years for a racist incident on the Paris metro. Video footage showed the fans chanting racist slogans as they pushed a black Frenchman off a train. And now the currency and stock markets. In the city, the 100 share index closed down 102 points at 6,667. A short time ago in New York, the Dow Jones was down 84 at 17,836. Against the dollar, the pound is trading at $1.56, and against the euro, it's at €1.44, which makes the euro worth 70 pence.
This was how PM began on the Monday before Christmas last year.
Glasgow City Council refuse bin lorry collided with a pedestrian. The lorries continued, and there's been a number of other collisions with pedestrians on the pavement. As a consequence, there have been a number of fatalities.
On the ground, there was 3 people getting triaged and 1 person was getting CPR. There was Christmas presents all over the place.
There looked over to the left, seeing this woman screaming and this man on the floor. We looked up and there was another machine, this bin lorry just moving on the curb, going left to right. It's just hitting people where they standing. It's such a horrible scene.
The festivities in George Square in the heart of Glasgow were cut short. A bin lorry careered at speed along busy streets before crashing into a hotel. In the end, 6 people were killed. Today, a fatal accident inquiry opened. Our Scotland correspondent Colin Blaine spent the day there. Who did the inquiry hear from today?
Well, the inquiry heard from one of the crew members on the lorry, and indeed saw video footage, which was very controversial, I think. The lawyers representing some of the families of those killed and injured argued that the video was too distressing to be shown in open court, but the Sheriff, John Beckett, who's chairing the inquiry, felt it did belong in the public domain. Now, there were 2 clips of CCTV. The first showed the bin lorry travelling rapidly, striking pedestrians and vehicles as it went. It mounted the pavement, scattering a crowd, many of whom ran across its path, and some on the pavement were knocked down. A second camera inside a hotel coffee lounge showed the bin lorry speeding across a pedestrian junction and smashing into the hotel itself. Now, I mentioned the crew member, that was Matthew Telford, who was travelling in the rear section of the lorry's cab. He described how the vehicle suddenly veered to the left. The lorry hit the pavement, then a bin, then pedestrians. He said he punched the driver, Harry Clark, on the back and shouted at him, "You're killing people, Harry." But there was no response. They smashed into walls, more pedestrians and more vehicles before crashing into the hotel.
Are we any clearer on why that happened?
Well, I think we're getting other aspects of what happened coming under the microscope. I think we're going to hear about the health of the driver, Harry Clark. His colleague described him as being a colour of grey he'd never seen before, and he said Harry must have blacked out. Also, you can imagine everyone wants to know whether anything could have been done to stop the vehicle. One question put by a lawyer for the families was whether it could have been fitted with an emergency stop button at the back of the cab, which could have allowed other crew members to bring the vehicle to a halt safely. Henry Toll, another crewman in the bin lorry at the time of the crash, said there never was any training about what to do if someone in the cab became unwell, and there hadn't been since the crash. I think, interestingly, the driver, 58-year-old Harry Clark, has said he will give evidence.
What's the legal remit of a fatal accident inquiry, Colin?
Well, it's an interesting one. A fatal accident inquiry only really applies in Scotland. It doesn't apportion blame. It's a fact-finding exercise intended to get to the bottom of what went wrong. And indeed, in this case, both the driver and the city council have been told they won't face criminal proceedings.
Colin Blaine, thank you. A little bit later in the programme, we've talked a great deal about the group Islamic State here on PM in recent days. Caroline Hawley has been hearing first-hand. You'll have already seen and heard accounts, I'm sure, but Caroline has been hearing from someone who can tell us from his own experience how Islamic State treats gay men. That's still to come a little bit later in the programme. If you still rejoice in driving an old car with, I don't know, wind-down windows, nothing as fancy as a glove compartment and maybe just a cassette deck, this next item probably isn't something you have to worry about. But many drivers may have been startled to see from America that it's possible for hackers to control more modern cars via the internet. Two researchers demonstrated it was possible for them to apply a car's brakes, take control of the steering and stop the engine despite not being in the vehicle themselves. And if you thought that was scary, wait till you hear what your DAB radio could do. Chris Valance reports.
A footbridge over the A13, 6 lanes of traffic roar past below. What could you do if you could hack into those cars remotely, armed with little more than a laptop?
So they could be sitting in a car park, they could sit on a motorway bridge, it could potentially make the vehicle stop, it could manipulate the steering. Some vehicles have the ability to park themselves by pressing a button. If those systems are available on those cars, then the attacker could take control of those elements of the vehicle.
The voice of Andy Davis, a security researcher at NCC Group based in Cheltenham. He thinks he's found a way to hack cars remotely using the same medium by which you may now be listening to me.